Stop whatever you're doing and go check the coolant in your car right now. If you open that cap and see anything that looks like mocha coffee, or maybe a chunky, oily sludge, or even just a weird foamy mess that reminds you of a bad latte, your engine is not just sick, it's on life support. And if you keep driving it, you're looking at a repair bill big enough to buy a whole other used car. Stick around because I'm going to show you exactly what that terrible mess is, where it's coming from, and the one big mistake almost everyone makes that turns a small $50 fix into a $5,000 nightmare. Don't skip this, you don't have much time. Intro: every car has coolant, that bright green, pink, or sometimes orange liquid that flows through the engine. It's basically your engine's blood. It keeps things cool when you drive hard, and it keeps things from freezing when it's cold outside. Simple, right? But the moment that clear, colorful liquid starts to change into a gross, brownish, muddy color, you are watching the clock tick down on your engine. This isn't normal wear and tear. This is a sign of a critical internal failure. When your engine's internal systems stop separating oil, transmission fluid, and coolant, they start to mix. And when they mix, they create a sludge that will systematically ruin every single component they touch, from your radiator to your water pump, and yes, your cylinder head. Most people freak out, flush the system, and think the problem is solved. It is not. That quick fix actually hides the real damage and makes the final repair way worse. Introduce a problem challenge. So, here's the challenge. You've spotted the sludge. Maybe it looks like old chocolate milk, or maybe it's just a thin layer of oil floating on top of the liquid in your overflow tank. The problem is that this isn't a problem with the coolant itself, it's a problem with the barrier that keeps the engine's vital fluids apart. Think of your car engine as a big office building with 3 separate water lines, one for drinking water, the coolant, one for the septic system, the oil, and maybe a third line for specialized machinery, the transmission fluid. When a main pipe in that wall breaks and all 3 liquids start mixing, you don't just have dirty water, you have a systemic breakdown. The head gasket is that wall in your engine. And when that wall fails, all hell breaks loose inside the combustion chamber and the cooling passages. The single biggest mistake people make at this stage is panic. They see the color, they realize something is wrong, and they immediately go to a quick lube place or a friend who tells them to just flush the coolant. They drain the bad stuff, put the new clean coolant in, and they drive away thinking, crisis averted. What they've done is taken a big, obvious red flag, the gross color, and washed it down the drain. The original fault, the broken head gasket or cracked block, is still there, leaking, but now the fresh coolant is masking the severity of the new contamination. The engine is still dying, but you can't see the signs anymore, leading you to drive for weeks or even months until the actual breakdown happens on the side of the road. We need to do the exact opposite. We need to identify which fluid is contaminating the coolant, because that tells us exactly where the fatal crack is. This is detective work, and your engine's life depends on you getting it right. Let's dive deep into the specific kinds of sludge, because each one is a smoking gun pointing to a different major failure. 1. The chocolate milk mocha sludge. This is the most common and often the most severe. This is what happens when engine oil mixes with the coolant. Oil and water don't mix easily, so they form an emulsion, a thick brown creamy substance that looks exactly like a disgusting chocolate shake. Where does it come from? In 95% of cases, this is a blown head gasket. The head gasket is the seal between the engine block, the bottom half, and the cylinder head, the top half. It has channels running through it for oil and for coolant. When the engine overheats, or sometimes just from old age and stress, this gasket fails. The compression from the cylinder pushes hot exhaust gas into the coolant. Or, more relevant here, the pressure from the oil passages leaks oil directly into the coolant passages. The fatal damage. This oil coolant sludge is pure poison for the cooling system. Oil isn't meant to flow through tiny cooling fins. It turns into a thick paste when heated and then cooled. This paste clogs everything. The radiator. The oil sludge will cake the inside of the tiny metal passages in your radiator. Once clogged, the radiator can no longer properly shed heat. This means the engine starts running hotter and hotter, which, in a vicious cycle, makes the head gasket even more likely to fail completely. It becomes a permanent, irreversible blockage. The heater core. This is a miniature radiator under your dashboard. The sludge flows in, clogs it up, and suddenly you have no heat in the cabin. Replacing a heater core is often a huge job that involves tearing out the entire dashboard. The water pump. The oil sludge is not a lubricating fluid. It wears down the impeller and the seals of the water pump, causing it to fail prematurely. No water pump means no coolant circulation, which means instant catastrophic overheating. The cost to fix this properly is not just the head gasket, a difficult, labor-intensive repair itself, but also a complete professional chemical flush of the entire cooling system, and likely a replacement of the radiator and heater core if the contamination was bad enough. This is how a small gasket problem turns into a multi-$1,000 engine rebuild. 2. The pink or red thin film. If your car uses red, pink, or even blue coolant, often in older European or some Asian cars, and you see a thin layer of what looks like metallic pink mud or dirt sitting at the bottom of the overflow tank, this is a different issue, but still serious. This is often the coolant reacting to aluminum corrosion. Where does it come from? This type of coolant is designed for aluminum engine parts, which almost all modern cars have. But when the anti-corrosion additives in the coolant break down over time, the coolant starts to eat away at the aluminum engine block or cylinder head. The reddish-pink stuff you see is aluminum oxide, rust, essentially. The fatal damage. The critical danger here is twofold. First, the passages in the engine are being physically eaten away, which can eventually lead to a leak outside the engine, or worse, a leak between the combustion chamber and the cooling system. Second, and more immediately, this sludge is abrasive. It acts like liquid sandpaper inside the cooling system, grinding away at the seals and bearings in your water pump and thermostat housing. It's a slow, aggressive way your engine is being destroyed from the inside out, caused by simply not changing the coolant on time. Most manufacturers say 5 years or 100,000 miles, but most people treat it like oil and change it way too late, letting those critical rust inhibitors fail. 3. The green, foamy top layer. This one usually appears as a layer of bubbles or a green foam sitting right on top of the coolant. This is the surest sign that combustion gases are leaking into the cooling system. It's not oil, it's not transmission fluid, it's exhaust. Where does it come from? Again, this points almost exclusively to a blown head gasket. The seal between the cylinder, where the gas explodes, and the coolant passage has failed. Every time the spark plug fires, the incredible pressure of that explosion forces exhaust gas into the liquid. This gas bubbles out into the overflow tank, creating that foam. The fatal damage. This is catastrophic because it prevents the cooling system from working at all. The gas takes up space where the liquid coolant should be. It creates hot spots where the metal is no longer touching liquid, causing localized overheating that will literally warp the cylinder head. And because the system is constantly being pressurized by the exhaust gas, it can overpressurize the entire cooling system, causing hoses, seals, and the radiator itself to burst. You'll be constantly refilling coolant, but the pressure will just keep blowing it out. This is a head gasket job that cannot be ignored for even a single day, or you risk completely cracking the engine block. 4. The red-pink sludge, automatic transmission contamination. This applies only to automatic transmission cars where the transmission fluid is cooled via a dedicated section inside the main radiator. If your coolant looks muddy but has a slight red or pinkish tinge that doesn't smell like engine oil but smells somewhat sweet and a little chemical, you might be dealing with a transmission fluid leak. Where does it come from? The automatic transmission cooler, ATF cooler, is often a small heat exchanger located right inside the main engine radiator. The transmission fluid flows through it to be cooled by the surrounding engine coolant. If this tiny cooler fails, the pressurized transmission fluid leaks directly into the cooling system. The fatal damage. While engine oil contamination, mocha sludge, is arguably worse for the cooling system itself, this is a double death sentence. The transmission fluid gums up the cooling system, just like engine oil, leading to overheating. But the big danger here is that the high-pressure engine coolant is now being forced back into the transmission lines. Coolant is abrasive and chemically destructive to the transmission's delicate friction materials and electronic sensors. When coolant gets into the transmission, it causes the clutch packs to slip and destroys the expensive transmission solenoids. You are facing the simultaneous replacement of the radiator and a complete total rebuild or replacement of your automatic transmission. This is easily one of the most expensive non-engine repair problems you can have. Climax key moment. So you've checked, and yes, your coolant looks awful. The terrible truth is that you are now past the point of an easy fix. The engine is on a timer. But here is the key moment. The thing you absolutely have to know before you call the mechanic, and the reason why that quick flush is a massive, costly mistake. When a professional mechanic diagnoses a blown head gasket, they don't just replace the gasket. They have to do a crucial, expensive step called head decking or resurfacing. Because the engine overheated, which is often what caused the gasket to blow in the first place, the cylinder head metal is often warped, meaning it is no longer perfectly flat. If the mechanic simply puts a new gasket on a warped head, the new gasket will fail almost immediately. The head has to be taken off, sent to a machine shop, and carefully shaved down to be perfectly flat again. This process is complex, time-consuming, and expensive. Now, remember the quick flush mistake. When you flush the system and drive on it, you allow the contamination to continue, but you hide the evidence. The warped head is still warping. The small leak is still getting bigger. By the time the contamination becomes visually obvious again, or by the time the engine finally overheats and leaves you stranded, the internal damage has progressed so far that the amount of heat the head has sustained is significantly worse. This means when the mechanic finally takes it apart, they might find a head that is too warped to be safely resurfaced, or worse, they might find a cracked cylinder head or a cracked engine block. A cracked head or block means the small $1,500 head gasket job just ballooned into a complete engine replacement or rebuild costing $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000. The difference between a simple, albeit expensive, head gasket job and a total engine replacement is often nothing more than the time you drove on the car after you first saw the sludge. That sludge is a clear visual warning. The engine is telling you it is fundamentally broken. Driving on it is like seeing a fire in your kitchen and only turning off the smoke detector. Your survival strategy now is simple. Do not drive the car more than necessary. You need to get it to a trusted repair shop immediately so they can do proper testing, like a compression test and a chemical block test, to verify the exact failure before the contamination becomes so bad it ruins the expensive, non-repairable parts. Every mile you put on it is a literal roll of the dice with thousands of dollars. Conclusion summary. So let's wrap up this survival guide. The coolant in your car should be clean, clear, and brightly colored. If you see mocha sludge, oil, foamy green-yellow bubbles, exhaust gas, or red-pink sediment, corrosion, or transmission fluid, you have a critical failure. The biggest mistake is the quick flush because it hides the problem and allows the fatal overheating and warping to continue undetected, turning a complicated repair into a catastrophic one. Your only move is to stop driving, check the overflow tank daily, and get to a specialized mechanic who understands that the repair is not just about the gasket, but about resurfacing the cylinder head and chemically cleaning every single component of the cooling system. Don't let your repair bill be higher than the car is worth because you tried to drive another week. Call to action, hit subscribe to save yourself thousands of dollars on future car repairs.